Good evening and welcome to TownHall Central for Thursday, April 30th, coming from Riverside, California. And tonight we're going to go over the primary ballot, which is on Tuesday, June 2nd, if you forgot. So we have a great friend tonight that's going to be going over everything that's on our ballot. So let me go over some basic information. Put on your calendars. We did this show close to when the ballots came out. So you had the latest information. Our next show is going to be on Thursday, May 14th, and we have a really special show. We have speaker Vic Dennis. He is a docent for the 250th anniversary exhibit at the Nixon Library, which is sponsored by the National Archives. I've actually seen it. I went in January on President's Day, and it was a really great exhibit. My son and my friends' kids really enjoyed it. So take advantage of that. That's going to be a great show. TownHall Central is brought to you by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and Greg Britton, attorney at law. So let's get started. I've got tonight's host is Susan SHELLY. She's a dear friend of the show. And if you want to know anything that's going on, she's the gal. So Susan is a columnist and editorial writer for the Southern California News Group, which is 11 daily papers, including the Orange County Register, the LA Daily News, Long Beach Press Telegram, and the Riverside Press Enterprise. She is also the Vice President of Communications for the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, the most influential taxpayer advocacy group in California. She's a frequent guest on California radio and TV news and interview shows, and she is the host of the Howard Jarvis radio show every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. on AM 790 KABC. Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Great to see everybody.
Great to have you. So I looked at the information booklet and I counted 62 people running for governor. Why don't we add a few more? We actually have enough people running for all 58 counties and some leftovers.
It's quite a group.
Yes, isn't it?
Yes, you'd have to really be at the Rose Bowl, I think, to have enough room for a debate with all the candidates. So this is our top two primary system. This is, what was it, Prop 14 at the time, 2010, I think it passed. And this is voter nominated candidates. So there are no party primaries anymore, as you all know. And everybody is an independent contractor, essentially, in politics. You raise your own money, you put your name on the ballot, you get your signatures, you pull the papers, you get signatures, you put your name on the ballot, you run your campaign, and you see how it works out. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about the top two primary is that it's a very easy thing to game the system. And we have seen this in the past. We saw Democratic frontrunners elevating Republican candidates that they were sure they could beat in the general election to defeat a credible Democrat in the primary. We've seen that a number of times in small races and big races. But this year, it isn't working. Runner in the Democratic Party, and they don't know what they're going to have to deal with. If you put yourself in the shoes of, let's say, the most brilliant consultant in the world for the Democrats, hard to imagine, but suppose you put yourself in that frame of mind and you say, well, what do I have to do to get my candidate in and not hurt that candidate? Well, the first thing you have to worry about is, are you going to need the endorsement of those candidates in the general election when you beat them? You have to think about that. And that goes for the other party as well. Because let's say there are two Democrats, I hope there are not, but let's say there are two Democrats in the general election, they're going to want the endorsement of the Republicans because even though they keep saying, oh, we don't need the Republicans, as Katie Porter famously said, I don't need those voters, they need those endorsements because 6 million people in California voted for Donald Trump in, I think, each of the elections. So there's a lot of people out there, and in a close race, they make the difference. So you can't insult too much the candidates that you might need later. And as for elevating somebody, well, there is no front runner, so it's very risky to elevate another candidate. And this is just a wild, crazy situation. If it happens, and it could happen, that there are two Republicans in the general election, then California will be on, in my opinion, a much better track no matter what happens. Because the trouble with the Democrats, in my opinion, is they are on board with all the policy ideas that are causing the problems. And they say things like, well, we're going to use technology and make it work better. It's not going to work better. I'll give you an example. You have that Ivanpah solar farm out on the 15 freeway near Vegas. And it was one of the Great Recession stimulus programs funded things with a bunch of federal money to build the thing. And now it's being closed. Nobody wants it, except the people who market these carbon credits and all that nonsense in that swamp. They want it because it generates money for them to have these carbon credits to fill these mandates for green energy. It's on your electric bill. All of these extra costs wind up on your electric bill. And electricity, to the extent it's part of the price of everything else in California, everything that's manufactured, everything is more expensive on this side of the Nevada border. We don't have to do that. And all the Democrats are on board with it. So you can't make it work better. It's always going to be a bunch of crazy mirrors out in the desert doing nothing except generating grift and graft for a bunch of people who are in on it. So the Republicans, by taking the governor's office, would be able to reverse the bad policies and replace the nominees in these unelected commissions that are appointed by the governor. Once you replace those people and you change the policy, you can fix the problems. You can drill for oil. You can make sense out of our energy policy instead of nonsense. You can lower prices in California for real. You can do wonderful things with the water policy. And, you know, the Coastal Commission vetoed a desalination plant in Orange County. They didn't have to do that. It had been like 20 years of doing environmental mitigation and costly studies and all the rest. And then at the last second, they killed it. Why did they kill it? A staff report at the Coastal Commission said there might be a tsunami and maybe it can't survive it. And for that reason, they killed the project and all the investors in it. So we don't have to do that. We could have sensible policies. We could have sensible policies on everything. And that would be a great thing. So this is probably the best chance that California has had for a really big improvement at the top of the government. And I hope that happens. I don't know. The other thing that's going to be really exciting, if I can jump ahead to November, the big news is that we're going to have some stuff on the ballot that is very, very important and will also help. If there is one Republican in the general election, it will help generate voter turnout for sensible ideas because sensible people believe these things. Voter ID has qualified for the ballot. Congratulations to everybody who collected signatures on that. And that is a big thing. Because if we just talk for a second about what's changed in our elections since Jerry Brown signed the ballot harvesting law, I think is where you could go back to. We have automatic voter registration by default. It's opt out, not opt in to voter registration, which has created a certain number of mistakes. Let's just put it that way. You have ballot harvesting, which is not a secure way of maintaining a chain of custody. You have ballot drop boxes, same problem. You have unattended buckets, essentially, where people can drop ballots. And then you're mailing a ballot to every registered voter, living or dead, present or not, stacks of ballots showing up. You see pictures online at apartment buildings, there's stacks of ballots for the people who lived there the last 12 years. And what happens to those ballots? What if somebody scoops them up and votes them? Well, supposedly they're all verified with signature verification, but the standards have been loosened. And what about collecting ballots 7 days after the polls close and bringing them to the counties? Well, they say it has to be postmarked, but it doesn't have to be postmarked. If you read the Secretary of State's regulations, it has to be postmarked, except they'll also accept a mark from a verified delivery service, a bona fide delivery service. But if it doesn't have a mark from a bona fide delivery service, it can have a handwritten date if the voter dates the envelope on election day. That's fine too. And then you have ballot harvesting. So here's what you could theoretically have happen without voter ID. You could have fraudulently generated ballots with fake signatures in a bag dated after the election, after they know how many they need, hypothetically, if it was a movie script, hypothetically, Somebody could walk in with a sack of ballots and say, I'm a bona fide delivery service. Here's my business license. But that's just yesterday. Nonetheless, I'm a bona fide delivery service. And you could dump them on the counter at the Registrar of Voters in any county in California, and they can't say anything about it. They can't say anything. You could have a perfectly honest person behind the counter saying, well, this looks suspicious. That's the person who's going to get in trouble. So what's the security? Well, if you have voter ID, then each voter has a 4-digit number that they put somewhere on that envelope, on the inside or somewhere. They put a 4-digit ID. That's an additional verification along with the signature to make sure that there's one voter, one vote, and that the vote came from the voter, which is not a given the way we do it right now. If somebody was to scoop up ballots or manufacture ballots and grab the voter rolls and ask someone else, like they did with those signature tables, paying people to sign someone else's name, I'm sure you saw those videos. If you did something like that, you'd catch it, because all of these criminals out on the street who want to do this for $5, they won't know the 4 digits of the driver's license or the social security number or whatever other ID, PIN number, whatever it is. They won't know that. So only the voter will know that. It's a much more secure system. And if you do that, then it doesn't matter that you mailed a ballot to everybody. It doesn't matter that you have early voting. It doesn't matter that you have drop boxes or ballot harvesting. When those envelopes get to the county, you can verify that one ballot came from one voter, and we'll be good. So that's on the ballot in November, a very big deal. And I think we might get some help from the President of the United States. He can text his family, he can text a few golf buddies, and probably raise enough money to pay for the campaign to run that across the finish line. Very exciting. The other thing that will turn out voters is the Save Prop 13 initiative. Proud to be associated with that. The Local Taxpayer Protection Act to save Prop 13 will make it harder to raise taxes. That's basically it. The courts have made it easier to raise taxes. This puts back what made it harder. So yes on this. We don't have a proposition number till summer, but yes on the Save Prop 13 initiative makes it harder to raise taxes. What did they name it at the Attorney General's office? Limits ability of voters to raise revenue for government services. Now, let's break that down. Limits, yes it does. Revenues are taxes. So it limits taxes. Ta-da! Get your Howard Jarvis decoder ring right here. Revenue means taxes. Resources means taxes. What's the other one? Funding means taxes. All these things mean tax increases, and they don't want to use that word. So you have that. Now, what else is going to be on the November ballot? Well, we have the billionaire's tax. Heaven help us. The billionaire's tax is actually a wealth tax. And I don't know if you've seen this yet, but there's a paragraph close to the end of this multi-page measure that says that the legislature, with a 2/3 vote of each house, can rewrite the law, as long as it's consistent with the purposes of the law. What are the purposes of the law? Confiscation of wealth and more spending. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the legislature, with a 2/3 vote, and they've got that, they've got a 3/4 majority for raising taxes right now. It tells you that they could drop the threshold. So it goes on the ballot like bait on a hook. Oh, it's only for 200 billionaires. It's not going to bother you. And if it passes, they set up this whole system to find out how much everybody has and how much they have to send in. And everybody's got to do compliance paperwork. Somebody has to sign under penalty of perjury that they're not a billionaire, and the billionaires have to itemize everything they have. And that doesn't raise enough money because they all moved to Texas. So then what? Well, now, as long as they've gone to the trouble of setting up this system at the Franchise Tax Board to evaluate everybody's wealth and figure out how much to collect, why, it would be a shame to waste all that computer time, wouldn't it? Then they drop the threshold. And then it's not a billionaire, then it's a millionaire. And then it's not a millionaire, then it's anybody who's got home equity or a retirement account or 2 nickels left to rub together by the time they get done with it. This has to be stopped. This is not a tax on other people. This is coming for all of us. And so it's very troubling. Now, some people think it's just for
And now don't forget,
negotiating.
it was backed by the SCIU too. It was
Yes, it's
backed by the SCIU too.
backed by the SCIU, the Healthcare Workers Local, United Healthcare Workers West. And they have a history of qualifying things for the ballot and then negotiating something else. So what do they want? I'm not sure. Could be something in the budget, could be something involving, who knows, the kidney dialysis companies again, who knows what they want. But they think they can negotiate because they've got 1.5 million signatures and they've qualified for the ballot. Now, one thing that might be a hitch in the get along is that the Secretary of State said April 17th was the last day to turn in your signatures if you intended to be on the November ballot this year. If you did it any later than April 17th, you would be on the November 2028 ballot instead, because there isn't enough time to verify the signatures, go through the process, a week here, 4 weeks there. It's all laid out in the statute. So nobody can shortcut it, I don't think. They turned in their signatures on April 28th. So it's entirely possible that they will miss the November ballot. That has happened before with some of these union-backed measures where they're just a little too late and they wind up on a different ballot. So it would not be unheard of. But in the meantime, everybody's acting as if it's going to be there. And the billionaires themselves, Sergey Brin, from one of the Google co-founders, and others, they have put something like $35 million into these independent expenditure and campaign committees to try and qualify other measures for the ballot that essentially defang the billionaire's tax. So you may have gotten those in the mail. One had to do with you can't count retirement accounts, and one had to do with imposing audits on all special taxes. And those are fine. Those are good ideas. Nothing wrong with them. But those two are bargaining chips. They've said publicly that the idea is to give Governor Gavin Newsom some way to negotiate with the SEIU. We'll take these off if you take that off. That seems to be the plan. I have to say that I really don't like this relatively new system where the law allows proponents to fully qualify something for the ballot and then withdraw it up until, well, this year's date is June 25th. You can negotiate for something with the legislature and then you can withdraw your measure in exchange. And I don't like that, because you go out and you tell the people of California to sign these petitions to do something, and then you pull the rug out from under them in exchange for something they don't even know about. And I just feel like the legislature should be out of the initiative process entirely. This is something that Darrell Steinberg and Bob Hertzberg, I believe, put together in probably 2014, if I remember right. And it changed the process for initiatives. It said when you get to 25% of your signatures, you have to certify that to the Secretary of State, and then the legislature can hold a hearing and start talking with you about what you'd like in exchange for pulling it off the ballot. I don't like this. You know, we almost had this with Prop 36. There was a big pressure campaign to get them to take it off the ballot because there was legislation supposedly was going to accomplish all their goals without the trouble of a campaign. But the legislation was not as good as the measure, so they wouldn't do it. Well, then the pressure went on the funders. Who were the funders? Was it Walmart? There were major retailers that were funding Prop 36. They went after them. And they said, pull your funding. We'll do this for you. We'll do that for you. It's going to be so wonderful. And I don't think that worked either. But even if it did work and they didn't have the money, it still passed with nearly 70% of the vote. And then the governor decided not to fund it. So we have our work cut out for us in this state, where the people use the initiative power, which was designed to get around an incompetent, lazy, corrupt government, any or all of the above. And they're still in our way. We're getting around them and they're still in our way. And of course, you all saw what happened 2 years ago with the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. 1.4 million signatures statewide, qualifies for the ballot. The governor and the legislative leaders sued to have it taken off the ballot. They said, this does too much. This can't just be an amendment. This is a revision of the Constitution. And as a revision, it can only start in the legislature. Absolute nonsense from start to finish. And yet, the state Supreme Court goes along with them, and the Secretary of State takes it off the ballot. Now, why would the state Supreme Court have a motive to go along with the governor and the legislative leaders? And by the way, why was it them who sued? Why not some front group with, no name on the ballot. Why wouldn't some group file that lawsuit after secret meetings in the back room? Because the message was, we control your budget. We control your staffing levels. We control everything that's important to you. And we're asking, take it off the ballot. And that's what I think happened. That's why I think their names were on it, even though there was some political risk involved. And that's why I think the Supreme Court took it off the ballot, because it was kind of a bogus argument that it's a revision of the Constitution. A lot of it was just putting back what's already in the Constitution, but the courts have taken away. So that's what we're doing with our Save Prop 13 measure. We're putting back what the courts have taken away. It's going to make it harder to raise taxes again. And that's what's happening with your ballot. We're having ballot bingo to see what's on and what's off. But to my knowledge, there is no plan to take voter ID off the ballot, and certainly not to take Prop 13 off the ballot. It should be an interesting November, a good turnout and an interesting November.
Yes.
So should we move on to the governor's
Susan,
race?
there was a question
okay.
in the there was a quick question in the chat.
Okay.
Let's see what the chat says. It was Phyllis, I think. Where was the question? Cynthia, do you know where the question was? Here it is. Phyllis, I want to ask
something. It has to do with something else. It doesn't have to do with the conversation.
Okay.
I can answer it anyway. We're all friends.
It actually has to do with something in the way that we register people for town hall. So it's okay.
Okay. Well, I don't know anything about that, so I can't help you.
All right. Go for it.
Okay, so the governor's race. Now, here's what we have in the governor's race. We have 2 Republicans. We have the former Attorney General and former HHS Secretary Javier Becerra, who appears to be in the lead, but the polls are possibly a little sketchy on that. I've heard it said that these were manipulated polls with boosting certain segments of the electorate in the sample to model an electorate that probably wouldn't be right. And you can really make these polls look any way you want to if you're paying for them. You can make them look like Salisbury steak on a Swanson frozen dinner. It's the best they can make it look. They work at that. So it may be that Becerra's not really in the lead. And then there are rumors all over the place that there's dirt coming out on him. And of course, you know that Dana Williamson, the former chief of staff to Governor Newsom, was indicted for corruption in a scheme that involved a campaign account belonging to Javier Becerra. So without getting into the complicated details of what that was all about, he's tied up in something where there are federal prosecutions going forward. There have been 2 guilty pleas, and Dana Williamson is reportedly in talks to make a deal as well. So we will see who rolls over and who drops a dime. Is that the old expression from the Humphrey Bogart movies? So we'll see what happens there with Javier Becerra. And who else do we have? We have the mayor of San Jose, Matt Mahan. He thinks that he is a moderate Democrat. I can tell you that he supports tax increases, so he's no moderate. A lot of people think they're moderate, and then when really the chips are down and you come to the tough vote, and they've sold themselves as truth tellers, they always seem to be telling the truth to the taxpayer and never to the unions, right? The unions get whatever they want and the taxpayers get the bill, and that's the hard truth that he's promising to tell us. So I'm not a fan there, my opinion. We have Tom Steyer, who is spending an absolutely breathtaking amount of money on this campaign, putting himself on TV. He has worked himself up with, I think, $150 million so far, from 1% to 10, 12, 14%, something like that. That's very expensive. What is he doing? Well, one of the things he's doing is he's trying to destroy Prop 13. I personally don't care for that. You can make your own decision. I don't care for that. I don't care for destroying Prop 13. He keeps calling it a loophole. He keeps calling it a tax loophole, a Trump tax loophole, of this or that. But what he's describing is Prop 13 itself. It's not a loophole. It's the state constitution. It's the fact that commercial property is protected by Prop 13, just like all property is protected by Prop 13, and for the same reason, because the crazy market valuations don't generate the revenue to pay those taxes. So everything is capped at an annual growth rate of 2%. That's as high as your assessment can go up. Now, there is something that he might be talking about which can be fixed, and it's not in Prop 13. This is the misconception. This is the definition of a change of ownership when the property is owned by an entity, like a partnership or a corporation. How do you know when the ownership of a corporation changes? Number of shares changing hands? How do you determine that? Well, who figured this out? After Prop 13 passed, the legislature worked on it. They had a special task force, and they considered different ways of deciding when a corporation changes ownership. And what they came up with is, as long as 50% or more, I guess more than 50%, does not change hands in one transaction to one person, it's not a change of ownership. This has allowed a certain amount of manipulation where you have something purchased by 3 entities and nobody gets 50%. And even though 100% of the ownership turned over, it's not a change of ownership. But that's not Prop 13, that's the state law. How fast could they change the state law? Tomorrow, if they wanted to. All they have to do is pass it. All they have to do is pass the definition change. It's been proposed a number of times. Former Senator Pat Bates personally proposed this legislation a number of times that changes the change of ownership. I think her last bill said that if 90% of the ownership changes, it's a change of ownership, no matter how it's divided up in fragments to different new owners. But the Democrats would not pass that. And why would they not pass that? And it's political. It has to do with the fact that as long as something looks unfair, helping a corporation, they can use that to attack Prop 13 itself. And that's what Tom Steyer is doing. It's a loophole. The corporation never changes ownership. It never gets reassessed. He can go right to the legislature and get that fixed in 15 minutes. As long as it takes to walk the piece of paper from one house to the other and to the governor's. That's it. They're all in the same building. They're neighbors. It could be fixed immediately. It has nothing to do with Prop 13. It's not in Prop 13, and we don't have to dismantle Prop 13. And that's my spiel for Prop 13. So that's Tom Steyer. He's also trying to preserve all that green mandate stuff. And maybe that's the real motivation for him to spend $150 million on a campaign, is that he's heavily invested in this stuff that California is mandating. And lately, the legislature's been showing signs of cold feet about some of these regulations and mandates because everything's so expensive. Electricity is so expensive. Gasoline is so expensive. Trucking is so expensive. Food is so expensive. And it's because of these climate mandates. So maybe his motivation in running for governor is an investment here to preserve the mandates that prop up his entire investment portfolio and that of all his clients. It could be something like that. At least that would be more rational than I'm spending $150 million to see what I look like on a Super Bowl commercial. That's an odd kind of narcissism. That's really extreme. So, while he might be a narcissist, I don't know. Many people are in politics. It might just be a sensible, interesting investment, which kind of tells you that maybe the climate mania, the climate alarmism, maybe it has reached the end. You know, President Trump has kind of sliced the underpinnings away from it in several different ways. There were a couple of Supreme Court decisions. There's the removal of some of the EPA regulations that allow some of this regulation in California, and there could be even more of that. And of course, California will sue over it and challenge it in court, but the state might lose, and the president might win, and that will be the end of the climate mandates. And maybe Tom Steyer's motivation is to make sure that somebody's in there with executive orders to mandate that it all continue. I kind of wonder about that. So who else? Who did I miss? Katie Porter. Should we talk about Katie Porter? Katie Porter lives in subsidized housing owned by the university at which she teaches. For all that she's going on and on about how much housing is important to her, she's living on the taxpayer dime in subsidized housing. And she was, even when she was a member of Congress and when she was running for the Senate, and now. So I don't really care what she thinks about housing. I think she's kind of a hypocrite on the subject. And she keeps talking about her kids won't be able to afford to live in California. And in my opinion, they can all move to Tennessee, and I wish them a happy trip. I don't want Katie Porter to be governor of California. I do think that she would lose to a Republican. I think we would probably, personal opinion, okay, just horse race, shooting the breeze with you guys because we're all friends. I really think that it would be a repeat of the 2016 election where everybody says, oh, of course Katie Porter would win. She's the Democrat. And no Republican can beat her. What, some Republican that in this state, that's not, Katie Porter would have a 99.9% chance of winning. And I think we might see something like the 2016 election where it just doesn't work out that way because just not that good a candidate, without getting into too much detail about that. So I don't think she's got really a chance. Who else do we have up at the top? Denise, I can't remember. We did Mahan, we did Steyer, we did Becerra.
Tony Thurmond.
Tony Thurmond, 1%. 1%. I think he raised less money in the last period of fundraising than it costs to buy a long weekend in Las Vegas. He did not raise much money. And 1%. What's that about? What's he doing in this race? I don't know. I didn't watch the entire debate yet. I was doing the Howard Jarvis radio show during the debate, so I have to kind of catch up on the clips. But I don't know. I don't think he's very good. Now, Eric Swalwell, we should talk about Eric Swalwell because he's out of the race, but he's still on the ballot. Did you notice that? Did you get your sample ballots yet? Well, it's coming. You'll get your sample ballots in the next couple of days, and Eric Swalwell is on them. So let me ask you a question. You have a certain number of Democratic primary voters who don't pay very close attention to politics. Everybody's busy. And they go running their finger down the 63, 43, however many names it is, 2 pages of names, and they see Eric Swalwell. I know him. I saw him on MSNBC. I'm thinking he gets 5-6% of the vote. What do you think? We will see. So the more the Democrats divide up their basically 60%, the better it looks for 2 Republicans to get in. And I think both of them would be super. I think they'd both be great. We will see. So let me see. What else do I have in my notes? On local,
do you want to go over the lieutenant governor?
You know, I don't
have
that
any of the other.
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
I can wing it.
There's 16 candidates running for lieutenant governor.
Okay.
And I know we can't say who we endorse because that's not what we're about. We're about just informing us. Okay. 62 candidates for governor and 16 for lieutenant governor. So
oh my.
I don't think we have enough people running.
Yeah.
Oh, and just for you information, it's UCI is where Mrs. Potato Head lives.
Okay.
UCI housing.
So there you go.
That's Katie Porter.
Taking it away.
Even my son calls her Mrs. Potato Head.
She has an interesting history. I think she's not the Democrats' strongest candidate. And at the moment, it looks like they're going to divide up their vote quite a lot. And we'll just see. It's very difficult to say whether a poll that asks about 8 or 10 names accurately reflects what the voters will do when they see that giant phone book of names on their ballot. I think it doesn't quite replicate the experience. And polls can sometimes be wildly inaccurate for reasons like that. So we will see. I don't know. For Attorney General, we have the incumbent Rob Bonta and we have Michael Gates. Michael Gates is the former city attorney for Huntington Beach, I believe, and he was working in the Trump administration for a while. And he is part of Steve Hilton's golden ticket. And I think he's a great guy. Rob Bonta is corrupt. I'll just say it flat out. So I hope he does not win re-election. There is a trial coming up in October of the former Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao and some donors that were heavily involved in donating to Rob Bonta. And you may remember that Ashley Zavala at KCRA, I think it is, in Sacramento, found that he had spent $500,000 of campaign money paying criminal defense lawyers to help him go through, I'm not sure what, something that somebody wanted for discovery. And he says he did nothing wrong, not a target, not a suspect, nothing. But he spent $500,000 on criminal defense lawyers to go through communications before they were turned over to the attorneys or the prosecutors that asked for them, or the FBI, I think it was. So what's that? What's that? We don't know. There was a report, he said this himself, there was a report that he was being blackmailed. Well, gee, maybe we'd like to know why the Attorney General could be blackmailed. What's that about? That seems relevant, but they don't want to talk about any of it. And the trial is October 19th. Jury selection in the Shengtao trial will begin about a week before that, if it's not pushed again. Her lawyer and the other defense lawyers tried to get some evidence excluded from the trial, and the federal judge said no. So that was interesting. And this is going to stretch out over the summer, and who knows, if somebody decides to cut a deal and testify against somebody else, maybe the current Attorney General of California could be in handcuffs right in the middle of the summer. You can't rule these things out. And we will see. So that's the Attorney General race.
Susan, did you get Villaraigosa? Did you go over him?
Oh, I don't think we talked about Villaraigosa. Well, he's not.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, but for governor, yeah.
You want me to talk about him?
Yeah. Oh, please do. Yes.
Okay. So Antonio Villaraigosa, former Los Angeles mayor, he's in his 70s now, and he is running for governor. He's not polling very well, and he doesn't seem to have a really strong reason for running for governor. Doesn't seem to have tremendous passion about any special issue like that. I don't think there's much going on there. Did I miss any of the others? Let me talk about the Republicans a little bit.
That's the ones that spoke last night or Tuesday night, that I was going over what's on the ballot. So I think you're okay, because there was 8 that spoke on Tuesday's debate.
Okay. So it's an interesting race on the Republican side. Chad Bianco, the sheriff of Riverside County, I think he'll do very well on the ballot because sheriff is a good ballot designation. And he has deep connections with a lot of voters because of the Prop 36 campaign statewide. And I think he's running on kind of a law and order platform as sheriff, and that will probably be effective at getting him some votes. And I'm told that people think he's Hispanic because his name ends in an O, and people think that may be helping him as well. I have no idea whether that's true or not. I've heard that from consultants. Steve Hilton has a ballot designation of small business owner. That's also very good. As soon as the first poll came out with small business owner under his name, he went up 5, 6, 8 points, something like that. So that's a positive, that ballot designation. And he's been traveling the state for about 3 years, working on policy papers, talking to everybody in every industry that's important in the state, agriculture, oil, everything, water and electricity, and every kind of major manufacturing or transportation interest in the state, working very hard. And he's written a book called Cala Failure, laying out what can be fixed. And I think he would be a very, very strong choice as governor. He has the endorsement of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association PAC. I don't endorse candidates in races because of my role with the editorial board and Howard Jarvis, so I don't personally. But he does have the Howard Jarvis endorsement. He's a strong supporter of Prop 13. If he ends up in the general election against Tom Steyer, it will be a battle over Prop 13. And I think I know how that'll come out. That would, regardless of the fact that the state has more registered Democrats than registered Republicans, nobody wants to be taxed out of their house. Nobody. I was a candidate for a while. I learned that firsthand. Democrat, Independent, Republican, nobody wants to be taxed out of their property. So anything that threatens Prop 13 is political poison in this state. And I'm not sure Tom Steyer knows that, but he'll find out at some point. Let's talk a little bit about the insurance commissioner race, because I do want to tell you about Patrick Wolf. We've been interviewing insurance commissioner candidates at the editorial board, and Patrick Wolf got the endorsement. He's a real numbers guy. He's a Democrat. He's a finance professional, and he is so interested in insurance, in the numbers, in the actuarial tables, in all of the things that insurance commissioners should be interested in. He's really perfect for that job. Now, I don't know if he can get it or not because he's running against very experienced politicians, and he's running against someone named Jane Kim, who is a Bernie Sanders person. And I have to tell you that she's as close to an authentic communist as you're going to find in California. She opened up her statement to the editorial board by saying she was going to turn the entire insurance industry into a state-owned single-payer system. No private insurance for cars, no private insurance for property. And then she said she has been thinking about how you could do a single-payer homeowner, and she decided that new housing developments would not be eligible to buy insurance in this single-payer system. So I asked her, I said, well, if it's a single-payer system and there's no private insurance, how can you build a housing development if you can't get insurance? And she said, and I quote, well, I haven't really thought about that. Communism, you can't beat it. It comes in, it lives on the surplus of the capitalism it's trying to destroy. That lasts, I don't know, 2 years, 20 years, depends on what it is. It sucks it dry, and then poverty. Everybody's in poverty, equal in the majestic poverty. Why is this happening? With the Democratic Socialists of America, the LA City Mayor's race is insane with Nithya Raman, who's a DSA candidate, and Karen Bass, who's a communist. What is going on? Spencer Pratt is very interesting. If anybody on this call lives in LA, he gave us a great interview on our editorial board call. I don't know who we're going to endorse. It's not up to me, but it's he gave us a great interview, and I think very highly of him. So if you're having any doubts about that, I can just tell you that he sounded solid to us. So there you go. Board of Equalization. I don't even know who's running for Board of Equalization. I can tell you what they do. They are the state elected tax board, the only elected tax board in the United States. And they have jurisdiction over the assessors who choose the value of property. So they set some of the rules and regulations that the assessors abide by. And they are elected, so they have a taxpayer-friendly outlook for the most part. And you can get to them. They have an appellate process where if your assessor gives you a valuation that you disagree with and won't do anything about it, you can do a local appeal there. And then you can also go to the Board of Equalization and appeal. So they are an important protection for taxpayers in the state of California. A lot of their responsibilities were moved out by the legislature because they didn't want anybody in favor of taxpayers. So some of their responsibilities a couple of years ago were moved to a new agency, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. And they do sales tax and that kind of thing. So they don't have as much to do as they used to at the BOE, but they are still very helpful. And the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association PAC has endorsed some candidates in those races, and you can see those on the website, hjta.org. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know who's running for treasurer. I haven't even looked. Controller, we have Herb Morgan running with the golden ticket of Steve Hilton. And I'm not even sure off the top of my head, I should have looked before I came on here, who's running for controller on the Democratic side. I don't know. But what the controller does, the controller and the treasurer are two financial positions in the state government. The controller is responsible for paying the state's bills, and the treasurer is responsible for managing the state's bonds, the bond debt, and refinancing when you can to save money, or deciding when it's the right time to issue certain bonds that have been authorized by the voters but not issued. That's the treasurer's job, and they can sometimes be helpful in managing the debt in a way that helps the budget. And the budget is a mess. The governor has run us into a situation with extra spending where I think from the time that Gavin Newsom took office in 2019 to the latest budget, It's an additional $100 billion. It's like double, almost double of what it was when he came into office. And it's all because of new programs and spending. He just, TK, mandatory transitional kindergarten, free for all kids, which is like daycare for all 4-year-olds at the taxpayer expense. He expanded Medi-Cal to cover every illegal immigrant in the state at our expense. They said it would cost $3 billion. Then they said it was going to be $6 billion. Then they said it's turning out to be $9 billion. I think the last number was $12 billion. And then they closed the enrollment. And by closing the enrollment, they did something interesting. They forced a lot of the costs back to the counties by closing the enrollment. So here's what's happening in Los Angeles County and in many other places. I think this happened in Santa Clara County, and I think it's happening somewhere else also. A general tax increase that everyone is telling you is for healthcare because the healthcare system is going to collapse because of, quote, cuts. And they're usually blaming the federal government for these cuts. But actually what's happening is the governor closed the enrollment. People are coming to the counties for their health care. It's not necessarily all getting reimbursed, and the counties are having to get stuck with those bills. The federal government is cracking down on enforcement of eligibility, which previous administrations didn't do. And that is creating a situation where the state is not getting reimbursed for as many people as it used to get reimbursed for. It's not exactly a cut, it's an eligibility change, and much of it has to do with undocumented immigrants. That's who's really getting removed from the system because that's federal law. Federal law says no federal reimbursements for general medical care for illegal immigrants. Emergency care, pregnancy care, but not everything, not general 100% health insurance that like Medi-Cal, full scope Medi-Cal that Californians who are legally here are entitled to have if they're low income. And this is a really insidious thing that they've done because it's not just the money, it's the availability of the services. You can expand the population that's on Medi-Cal. It's currently at 14.1 million people. It's a third of the state or more on Medi-Cal. That doesn't make more doctors. That doesn't make more nurses. That doesn't make more facilities. That makes more wait time. That makes more problems for the people who are already on it. And the more they grind the doctors on the reimbursements to try to save money, the more they get into a situation where the doctors are providing care that costs more to provide than the reimbursement covers. And now they're being put in the position of having to say, I can't see any more Medi-Cal patients. It's got to be either a limited number or none because I can't run my business this way. I can't pay my bills if I lose money on every patient I see. That's what California has done to people by recklessly overexpanding benefits and calling it compassionate or whatever they call it, our California values. It's not affordable. And now in Los Angeles, you are literally seeing a sales tax increase on the ballot to pay for healthcare for undocumented immigrants. That's the reason they need it. They don't want to say that. So what are they saying? They're saying we have to do this or all the trauma centers will close. All the emergency rooms will close. Every Californian will be affected by it. We have to take care of our communities, our families, our values. And when you really dig into it, it's a sales tax increase to cover the cost of providing full health care to undocumented immigrants without any limitations whatsoever. I don't know. If the voters figure it out, they're not going to be too happy with that because the whole premise of not taking any action against illegal immigration during the Biden years and before was it's good for the economy. We need the workers. They pay taxes. Da, 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 da. Well, maybe they do, but it's not covering the healthcare costs. So I think Los Angeles County is going to be sorry that they put this sales tax on the ballot. It was a 4-1 vote on the Board of Supervisors. It's a general tax. I don't know if you're aware of this difference, but a special tax needs a 2/3 vote, and a general tax that just goes to the general fund needs a simple majority. And That's if it's put on the ballot by the government body, by the Board of Supervisors, by a city council. If the money is committed to a particular purpose, it needs a 2/3 vote. So what are they doing? They're saying it's a general tax, which only needs a simple majority, but they're talking as if it's a special tax, as if it's dedicated to healthcare. The measure that's on the ballot has this huge, long, detailed spending plan. But if you go to the very beginning of it, it says, this is the intent of the Board of Supervisors. It's completely not binding. It can go on for ages and ages and pages and pages. It doesn't mean anything. They can change all of it by intending to do something else a year from now or a week after the election if they care to. So it's very deceptive. The people in San Jose were fooled. They had exactly this kind of thing, and they voted for the tax increase to keep their hospitals open. And it was a general tax, and it doesn't have to keep the hospitals open. It can go anywhere. It can go to pensions. It can go to redecorating offices. It can go to anything. So do you trust your government? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. In the city of Riverside, there is a sales tax increase. I believe the sales tax was 1% temporarily, and now it's going to be 1.25% permanently. If you live in the city of Riverside, take a look at that. I want to say Measure Z. I don't have it in front of me. Or do I? Let's see. And in the city of LA, there are some measures on the ballot. There's a hotel tax. I believe the hotel tax is currently 14%, and they're going to make it 16%. Or it's 16 and they're going to make it 18. I can't remember. But they need more money in Los Angeles because they're running the city into the ground. And it's not going very well. And the city's probably going to get stuck with massive costs for the Olympics. Nothing seems to be preventing that in the contract. So this is also a concern. And there's, interestingly, they think they can collect taxes from illegal cannabis businesses. I don't know how you collect taxes from illegal cannabis businesses, but that's what the city council put on the ballot, a measure that entitles them to collect the same business taxes from the illegal businesses as the legal businesses. This will be interesting. I don't know what they're going to do with that if it passes, and I don't even know if it will, but there you go. That's Los Angeles for you. If you're a criminal, you must pay your taxes, and if you don't pay your taxes, you're a criminal.
I'm stuck.
Oh, I'm not hearing you. You're delayed.
Does this mean they're going to hang around the street corners now? No, it says I'm
It
muted.
could be.
Does that mean
It could be.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can.
I mean,
it could be they're going to hang around
okay.
the street corners. They also suggested in one of their city council meetings, they suggested that they would come down on the landowners. So if a store opened up in a strip mall or wherever, or a kiosk, they would go after the property owner for not adequately vetting the business. And so that's going to be interesting. What are they going to make every business fill out more paperwork and do more compliance required something or other? If it's not on time, you get fined for it. More of that to try and chase down illegal pot businesses. Can't they just close them because they're illegal? Can't they just go in and raid them and close them? I guess not. We don't do that.
Someone had a question about the Secretary of State runners. Are you able to go over those? It's Shirley Weber, Gary Blenner, and Michael Feinstein and Donald Wagner.
Donald Wagner is a former or current Board of Supervisors member, I think it is, in Orange County, and I believe he was in the legislature. He's a solid guy. I know Michael Feinstein. I occasionally am at Pierce College in Woodland Hills for one of the political science professors does like these round tables of political parties, and he comes and represents the Greens, and I represent the Republicans, and we have ferocious but friendly arguments. So he's a very nice guy. He wants to use the Office of Secretary of State to push different kinds of voting systems like ranked choice voting and things like that. I'm not a fan of ranked choice voting. I think that's needlessly complicated, and every time we change the voting systems, like with top two, it just seems to make it worse. So I wouldn't go along with that. My personal vote would probably be for Don Wagner. I think he's good. I'm not a fan of Shirley Weber. She's a nice person, and I think she tries hard, but she's not someone who wants to clean up the elections. there was a situation early on in her term when the Election Integrity Project was trying very hard to just get someone to look at evidence that there had been issues with the voter rolls and with that statewide voter database, and couldn't get an answer out of Shirley Weber's office. They were just ignoring her and ignoring the issue, which was pretty serious, and they should not be doing that. So I think that's kind of a bad sign. The reason I know about this is that I had the opportunity in one of these editorial board meetings to ask her about that. And at first she kind of poo-pooed it, but then it was as if she heard herself poo-pooing this serious concern about election integrity. And she stopped and she said, I will look into it. And so I think sometimes she can be on the right side of things based on that. But then again, the office should have been looking at that material on its own and not needing to be prodded by anybody. So I think we need some cleanup on the Secretary of State's aisle, and it would be a good thing to have someone in who was more aligned with election integrity issues.
We have a question. How do we stop
Any other local?
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
Denise. How do we stop citizens' initiatives from raising taxes by a simple majority?
Oh my goodness, you vote for the Local Taxpayer Protection Act to save Prop 13 because it does that. It stops this loophole in the 2/3. What happened here, the Constitution says, you can look it up, Article 13A, Section 4. I actually made a graphic to show the League of Cities, which is all the city council members from around the state. And I was addressing their Revenue and Taxation Committee about the initiative. And I made a graphic of that paragraph of the Constitution. And just ahead of it in the PowerPoint, I put the oath of office that they all have to take, which says, I will bear true faith and allegiance to the state Constitution of California. I said, now let me show you the state Constitution of California. And I put up the Prop 13 language. And what does it say? It says special taxes need a 2/3 vote and transfer taxes are illegal. It says that in the state Constitution. So what does our measure do? It says special taxes need a 2/3 vote and transfer taxes are banned. It's exactly what's in the Constitution. So we're going to put it back. And obviously, you're going to get a lot of pushback. You're going to get a lot of mail saying this is the end of civilization as we know it. I think it should be harder to raise taxes. I think they should have to get a 2/3 vote. This idea that there's a loophole came from the state Supreme Court in 2017. Here's what they did. They suggested without really deciding, they didn't really decide it, it was in dicta, it was just a comment, that if a citizen's initiative raises taxes, maybe the Constitution doesn't apply. Right out of the air, that came. Right out of the air. And then the appellate courts below widened that loophole again and again. It was first tested in San Francisco. Two of the county supervisors looked at each other and they looked at that decision and they said, if we propose this tax increase at our desks and put it on the ballot, it's going to need a 2/3 vote. But if we buy clipboards and we make it an initiative and we collect signatures, I think it's just going to need a simple majority. So they did that. And it passed with 50.8%. 50.8. And they declared it passed. And everybody sued and lost. And it happened in Fresno, and it happened in San Diego, and it happened in Los Angeles. And the appellate courts have gone along with this. And everybody's appealed back to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will not take those cases. And when we fix this loophole in the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act in 2024, the state Supreme Court took it off the ballot. We've just got to do this. We've got to fix this problem. The Local Taxpayer Protection Act to save Prop 13 says special taxes need a 2/3 vote, even if they're by initiative, and no transfer taxes. All the transfer taxes in California above 0.11%, which is very old and has been there forever, everything above 0.11% is repealed in 2 years. So that's Measure ULA. That's a measure, I think it's GS in Santa Monica. There's one in Culver City. There's one in San Francisco. I think one in Oakland. They're all over the place. There's like 27 of them statewide. And they would all be repealed in 2 years. And so would any parcel taxes. So something interesting that's going on in Glendora, I see Valerie there from Glendora, and there is a so-called citizens initiative to raise money to build government buildings, like another city hall and whatever else, government facilities. What kind of citizens initiative is that? Well, it's the same thing again. It's pretending to be a citizens initiative. And it's a parcel tax, a pretty substantial parcel tax, and it would pass with a simple majority because this loophole says the Constitution doesn't apply to citizen initiatives. But guess what? If the Howard Jarvis measure passes, that parcel tax would be repealed because property-related illegal taxes that are not consistent with our initiative would be repealed. It doesn't touch the sales taxes, unfortunately. It only does the property-related ones. So transfer taxes would be repealed, and parcel taxes that did not get a 2/3 vote would be repealed. So if this Glendora measure passes with a simple majority, let's say it gets on the November ballot, let's say it passes with a simple majority, and now they're all excited, they've got their stream of revenue, they're going to go into the bond market and they're going to borrow all this money to build all these buildings. You know what the bond market is going to say? Your tax is repealed in 2 years. Get out of here. So you might let those people who are circulating that in Glendora know that their tax is about to be made illegal when the Save Prop 13 Act is adopted. Their tax will be repealed in 2 years. So there isn't any point in doing it because they're not going to get any bond money out of it. They'll get 2 years of parcel tax revenue, and they can't do much with that. That's the happy news. Anybody who's pitching a parcel tax that thinks they can get it with less than a 2/3 vote, this measure will repeal it. Isn't that nice?
We have another
Susan, do you
question.
want to take any questions from the
I'm
audience?
happy to
Cynthia,
take
do you have
questions.
any other questions you want to
Yeah.
bring up from the chat?
Let's do it.
Yeah, here's one more from the chat. Can we hear comments on Stop Nick Shirley Act, California's AB 2624?
Yes. I don't think it really is the Stop Nick Shirley Act. It's troubling, but it's not quite what was presented in the first news reports. It doesn't ban posting material that you record outside of somebody's business. What it is, there's already a program for domestic violence survivors and for people who work in controversial parts of the medical system of concealing your real address. It runs through the Secretary of State's office, and you can have a fake address or a different address to receive all your official mail. And the reason for that is because there was a fear that people would be tracked down or doxxed in some way. So what this act does is expand that program to everyone who does immigrant services, the nonprofits, the legal services offices, anybody who does anything for undocumented immigrants or any kind of immigrants would be able to get this fake address through the Secretary of State's office. And it would be illegal to try to dox them, to put their faces or addresses on your video. But it's not illegal to stand in front of the Leering Center and report on the fact that they got this grant and that you don't see any children there. That's not illegal. So it's a little different than what was portrayed. But one thing in it that is concerning is that it creates a private right of action to sue the filming company, the individual who's doing the YouTube video. And so that has kind of a chilling effect, because even if they're not doing anything wrong, they could get a letter saying, we think you're doing something wrong. And the legal bills are brutal when that happens to you, just like all the other shakedown lawsuits that we have in California, whether it's the ADA remodeling or it's wage theft or whatever. If you're doing something that a lawyer wants to sue over, you don't have your Prop 65 warning up, and they're going to file a lawsuit against you. The lawsuits are very expensive, and there's a big incentive to settle and settle and settle. And then you pick up and you move to Nevada. So you don't want people who are YouTube journalists to be subjected to the threat of these private lawsuits on behalf of these workers. So I think the bill is troubling for that reason. but I don't think it's quite what was described as preventing the reporting. It doesn't really prevent the reporting.
Yeah, any other questions from the chat?
I don't see any other ones other than, so a local transportation tax. Let me go back up. So a local transportation tax will then need 2/3 threshold if the tax measure passes.
Yes, a local if the money is committed to the transportation system, if it's a special tax, then it will need a 2/3 vote, even if it's proposed by a citizens initiative. I don't know if it applies to things that are on the same ballot in November, but it certainly would apply afterwards.
All right, maybe we should
Yep,
go
that's
ahead
it.
and open up. And Susan, you want to take some questions from the audience?
I am happy to take questions.
Are there anybody else that wants? Okay. All right. Glenn's going to open up the room. If you have a question, go down to the bottom of your screen. There is a circle with 3 dots that says more. You should be able to, hopefully that's the, oh no, is that the right one where you raise your hand? Go to where it says raise your hand. Wendy, you have a question. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Susan your question?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of questions.
Oh, John. Oh,
What? Am I on? Are we on?
go. Yes. Yes.
We are.
Yes, you're.
For the first time after listening to one of these Zoom meetings, we're thinking we don't. What are the names of all these? It's like we've missed something. Okay. What are the names of? We've got the millionaire tax. What's its name? That's a no. Voter ID should be like that. Should be just like that. Safe Prop 13 is a yes. And that health measure, what's it called? Because it's deceiving when you're looking at the ballot, and we don't want to help illegal aliens.
Are you in Los Angeles County?
No, we're in Riverside.
Okay, well that one is in LA County, so it won't be on your ballot, but it's Measure
Okay. We
ER.
were trying to listen to everything you said. We feel like we've missed too much.
Well, you know what? The billionaire's tax and the Save Prop 13 and the voter ID, that's the November ballot. So don't worry about that yet. We'll be talking about that in September, I think, or October.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to let you know that they've all qualified, or they're getting close to qualifying.
Okay, well that helps because we kind of know what we want to do as far as the officials.
Yeah.
So as far as the measures, there's no measure that
there are no statewide measures. It looked for a while like there would be
the elected officials.
It's just the elected officials under statewide ballot.
That you need to know what it is. Otherwise, you'll vote against it or for it, and you don't want it.
Exactly. It's very difficult. By the way, if anyone is in Los Angeles, the city, and got a streetlight ballot, I can tell you that you can vote no on that if you want to. That's a increase in the assessment for streetlights because they're all getting stolen, vandalized, copper wire thieves, the whole thing. And so the city, rather than crack down on copper wire theft, has decided to raise taxes. And it's a special assessment, which has a special assessment ballot different from the June ballot for the primary. If you're a property owner in Los Angeles, even if you don't live in Los Angeles. My screen froze?
You want to ask me?
Can you hear me?
No. You have anything there?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're good, Susan.
Okay.
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, so if you own property in the city of Los Angeles, even if you don't live there, you should have gotten a ballot for the streetlight assessment. And that is a 120% increase in the streetlight assessment that you currently pay on your property tax bill. But you can vote no. All you have to do is get your ballot, mark no, print your name, sign your name, put it in the business reply envelope, and send it back to the city. If you lost your ballot, if you didn't get one, if you're a property owner in the city of Los Angeles, you should have gotten one. But if you threw it out accidentally, you can get a replacement ballot. And it doesn't have to be back at the city office till June 2nd. But there's no grace period. It has to be back in the office, not postmarked, in the office, June 2nd. So all you have to do is email, I'll say it out loud, and if anybody needs it, you can ask me again. BSL for Bureau of Street Lighting, BSL-assessment@lacity.org. Just email them and they will send you a replacement ballot. And then you can vote no, and all the ballots are counted on June 2nd at the city office. Don't send it back to the county with your election ballot. That's the wrong office. It's got to go back to the city. Can't put it in a drop box. It's a completely separate election, even though it happens to be the same day. And then when all the ballots are counted, if the noes outweigh the yeses, it can't be imposed. And that's your Prop 18 right to vote on taxes protection from 1996, courtesy of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association.
LGL.
And I read an article that a gentleman invented a device to put on the lampposts so they can't steal the copper wire, and the city rejected it. Go figure.
There was one city council member who hinted in a city council session that all they wanted was the money to pay more overtime, and they don't have a plan at all to fix the lights. So, really? She's saying that out loud at the city council? One of the members, Monica Rodriguez. Oh boy, this is troubling.
Yeah, it is. Now, also too, don't forget the post office is delaying. If so you may want to explain that better than I'm going to say it. So Susan, can you explain that, what the post office is now doing with our mail? And
yeah, the post office changed some of its procedures so that they don't postmark mail on the day it comes in necessarily. It might be postmarked the day after it comes in. So if you are sending, let's say, your tax payment or anything that has to be postmarked by a particular date, like a ballot, it is possible that you are going to miss it even if you drop it off in time. So either go to the counter and get a postmark while you're standing there, or send it a little earlier, or go to a polling place and drop it off in person. But if you put your ballot in the mail on election day, you might be too late, although my personal feeling is they'll count it anyway. Count everything for 7 days. They don't care. But they should throw it out. They should. If you have a postmark that's the day after the election, they should say, I'm sorry, that's too late. They should not count it.
all right, thank you for that. Okay, John, thank you for your patience. Go ahead and ask your question.
So we had a situation in 2022. There was a resolution by the Board of Supervisors to pass a half-cent sales road tax, and it failed. It was a 2/3 because it was a resolution. It was a 2/3. They turned back around and tried it again in 2024, and it was going to be a 2/3. But then the consultants that were working on it hijacked it and did a quote citizens initiative.
Citizens initiative,
and it got passed by about 1.5 points, over 50%. So, so the question I have is, if your tax, your local protection tax act, say Prop 13, I guess, if that passes, is this retroactive, or is it just from that point going forward that if taxes were raised by a simple majority?
It will reverse property-related taxes. It will repeal them in 2 years. It does not do anything about sales taxes. Which kind of a tax was this?
This was a sales tax.
I'm afraid we're all out of luck on that.
Okay, but going forward, it would then require...
Going forward, it would this loophole would go away.
Because everybody's jumping in Fresno County, Madera County, everybody's jumping on board with the Citizens Initiative now because the threshold is a lot lower.
Exactly. And every time they do a poll, they say, well, we can't get to 2/3, so let's do it as a citizens initiative. And that is so corrupt because it's not a genuine citizens initiative. It's coming from these government people.
Right.
And they're just using front groups.
Yeah, it's an inside job. Anyway.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Now, it's not absolutely clear that the courts will let that go. There could be some litigation ahead of it if there's plenty of evidence that they're colluding. So if you have anything, if you see emails, if you see an article, if you have a quote from a government official colluding with the citizens group, hang on to it and send it over to the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association.
It was the same consultants they hired for the 2/3. Then they turned around and did it. The same consultant did the Citizens Initiative.
This is Fresno, did you say?
This is Madera County.
Madera County. Okay, well, you can send that to me if you want to, susan@hjta.org. And I'll send it to the legal department and see if they think that lines up with one of the cases they're bringing, because they haven't really given up on it. They still think these are illegal.
I will do that. I will get the information to you then. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we got a terrible appellate court ruling in the LA area on Measure ULA. And the 2 appellate judges who signed off on that are on the ballot in November. So guess what I'm going to do? You know how people call me and they say, what about the judges? I'm going to say, here's 2 that are a no. They don't believe that the Constitution really applies.
So if we pass it, what's to stop the liberals from suing and then overturning it that way
After it is
after it
adopted?
passes? If we pass it, if
Well,
it gets passed,
they'd have to have a reason that it couldn't go forward. I don't know what that reason would be. And because the last one was taken off the ballot in this lawsuit, our lawyers and a bunch of other lawyers looked at every word of that decision that took it off the ballot, and they said, okay. So they said, we can't do this, but we can do this. And that's how they wrote the thing. And they wrote it very, very carefully. And we wanted it to be a one-page petition. I think I have it here. We wanted it to fit on one page like this so that somebody could print it at home and sign it and send it back. And so that put a word limit on it. So between the word limit and the restrictions that they were looking at to make sure it wasn't thrown out, let me tell you, that took like 6 tries over 8 months to get the language that we finally ended up with. They're pretty confident that it can't be overturned. We'll see.
I hope so. All right,
Yeah, me
good.
too.
Thank you for your question, John. I saw someone ask about judges, but are there going to be judges on the November ballot that you know of?
There will be appellate judges on the November ballot. There are
Okay.
Superior Court judges on the current June ballot. Somebody told me today there are 11 races in LA County. The editorial board is splitting up the work on analyzing all of that. It's a lot.
Okay, so that can be on your website. So I can post it.
I don't know if Howard Jarvis is going to do any of that. I'll probably write a column.
Okay,
and
all
then
right.
you
So
can
look
post
for
it.
Susan's column on that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Susan? Now's the time to ask. And you remember, say Prop 13, if the billionaire's tax qualifies, that won't be till November.
Right.
And then the voter ID is not till November.
Right.
So mainly this primary is for positions in government. Unless you're in a city that has a special proposition, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Correct. And there are not too many propositions. I'm told they're mostly going to be November.
Okay.
So there's not too many of those.
Dale has a question. Dale, do you want to mute yourself and ask Susan your question?
Yeah, I wanted to know if the LA County Sheriff, is that going to be on the ballot?
Yes, LA County Sheriff is
Okay.
on the ballot. Alex Villanueva is running against the incumbent, Robert Luna.
Yeah, we need to get rid of Luna.
I would agree with that. My opinion.
Let's see. Ron, you've got a question.
Yes. Thanks, Denise. So Susan, have you heard about a proposition, not in the technical sense, but about a $60,000 fee for selling your house in
Yeah,
the state?
no. Is that some kind of a transfer tax?
Something like that. So I just want to know if you actually heard something. I guess I heard it on the radios. I forget which I was, listening to it. So the idea had popped up and I wondered if you had heard about it. So thank
I have
you.
not, but it's possible that in some city they were doing a transfer tax, and that would be probably $60,000. That can easily be. So we're going to stop all the transfer taxes. They will be totally banned after our initiative passes, and all the existing ones will be rolled back in 2 years, but they'll be immediately banned, no new ones, which is what the Constitution says. What Prop 13 put in it. Why do they keep eroding our protections?
Exactly. Dale has another question. Dale, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say I did get a list that Steve Cooley did on the judges.
Oh, good.
So you
Want to email that to me? Or is it, does he have it on a website?
Do I have your emails?
Susan at SUSAN at hjta.org. Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association.org. Susan at hjta.org. Thank you for that.
Okay.
You saved
And
me
then-
a step.
Yep. And then Cynthia, can you put her email in the chat? And then Miss Pat, you have a question.
I do. When there's measures, how do you find out who was the author of it? Because especially when they're taxes, sometimes they don't have a senior exemption. I just learned about that last year, and I don't know exactly how to find out, read it to see if there's a senior exemption, and if there's not, how to get one in there. Yes.
If it's on the ballot, it should say in the ballot label if there's a senior exemption, because they would want you to know that before you vote. That would be a selling point for them. So read the ballot label or read the booklet to see if a current proposal has a senior exemption. The ones that are currently on your property tax bill, if it's a bond, you can't have a senior exemption for a bond because it's not lawful to do that. Bonds are based on all the parcels. But if it's a parcel tax, which is like an extra property tax, very often they have an exemption either for seniors or for low-income seniors or for low-income people or something. And so the way you can find out on that is there's usually a phone number right next to the tax on your bill. It'll say something like voter approved charges. And there's a phone number for the agency that's levying the parcel tax. And you can call that number and you can say, is there a senior exemption? And they will tell you. So that's one way to do it.
Right.
Another way to do it is you can use Grok or another AI, ChatGPT, and you can say, I have a question about use the exact title of whatever the tax is in whatever county it is. Is there a senior exemption? And those chatbots are really good at finding all the fine print from all these legal things. They've got all of that in their database, and they're very fast. So I have found that very useful.
And you said Grok. How do you spell that?
Grok is Grok. And it's on the Twitter site, x.com is what it is now, x.com.
Okay. I have to go on chat because I'm not Twitter savvy. So
any of them, you can use Gemini, you can use ChatGPT, you can use Grok, or you can use Google. Google can probably find it for you. Just type it into type the name of the tax into the search bar, put quotation marks around it so it searches the whole phrase. And then you can ask if, in plain language, you can say, is there a senior exemption? And Google will probably find that for you.
Mm-hmm. And it could tell me, because the other thing I'm noticing, I live in Pasadena, and so I'm getting all these surveys that are asking questions about the city college, and anyways, and I know that they're trying to see if they have enough people that would vote for it, but I don't see who they are so that I could call them and say, do you have a senior exemption? Just out of curiosity.
You know, if they're polling on something that's not written yet, I don't think there's any way you can find out who it is.
Okay.
Because they don't want you to know yet.
Okay.
It could be it could be anybody. It could be the government. It could be an organization that's in favor of the tax or that's not in favor of the tax. Anybody could be doing that poll. Hard to know.
Okay.
But when it's on the ballot, it should tell you right on the ballot label whether there is a senior exemption. Because as I said, the people who are promoting it would want you to know that.
The ballot label, that's in the book? Or
it's in the book. So when you get your ballot and there's like a paragraph of text describing what the measure is, that's called the ballot label. So there's a ballot title and then there's like a summary. And that is where most people get their information. There's also a book, but the book comes out at a different time. It doesn't mail with the ballot. So if it's a county measure, it's in one book. If it's a city measure, it's in a different book. If it's a state measure, it's in that big newsprint thing that the Secretary of State sends out. Another place to check is you can look at Ballotpedia. That's a good website for looking up measures close to an election. They usually have the text of everything. Ballotpedia.com.
Thank you. Because I did 2 years ago, I took my property tax and I counted up how much extra I'm paying, and I called each one of the numbers and asked them, what are you? When do you expire? And then this year I noticed that some have gone up a lot and some have gone down a few pennies. And so that's got my mind, spinning, because I'm a senior citizen, like maybe many people that are watching, and we have a fixed income unless we want to work at Walmart. And when you walk in, we go, welcome to Walmart. Okay. We have to live with
You
it.
shouldn't have to do that just to pay taxes.
I should not have to do that. So that's what really got me stirred up to start paying attention to my property tax because I hadn't for years. So thank
There
you
you go.
very
You're
much.
welcome. So let me tell you about the Prop 218 process for repealing those taxes. I don't know if you're aware of this. I learned it while I was working at Howard Jarvis. Never heard about it before. Prop 218, which passed in 1996 in Section 3, has a process where the voters can repeal or reduce any charge, fee, tax, or assessment, any of them. And the way you do this is you prepare an initiative and you collect signatures on it, and you only need 5% of the number of people who voted for governor, any of the candidates for governor, in the last general election. You don't need 10% of all the registered voters in the jurisdiction, which is a lot more people. You need 5% of the people who voted in the governor's race in the last election. In Los Angeles, that's about a third. It's like 150,000 if it was the basic initiative threshold, 10 or 15% of the registered voters. For a Prop 218 repeal of a tax, it was only about 40 or 46,000, I think, signatures, as opposed to 150. So it's much easier to qualify one of these for the ballot, just a straight repeal of a tax, fee, assessment, or charge. Something to keep in mind. For instance, in Los Angeles County, you could repeal the sales tax for transit. There are 4 half-cent sales taxes for transit. Suppose you wanted to get rid of 2 of them. You can do a Prop 218 initiative to reduce those taxes by half. And you can do that with probably 150,000 signatures in LA County, which is not much. It's a lot less than was needed, for instance, for the George Gascon recall, which was some 500,000 or 600,000 signatures that they needed. This would be like 150. So that is an opportunity that people in California don't really know about. In San Diego right now, people are using that process to repeal a trash fee, and business groups in the city of LA just used it to qualify a total repeal of the city's gross receipts tax, which has the city council alarmed and hysterical. So that may be on the November ballot, or it may be negotiated off, but we'll see. But they use that Prop 218 repeal process to get rid of a tax. Very powerful tools.
So I could just Google that Prop 218
Prop
repeal
218 Section 3 initiative.
initiative. And then how does one person try to get all of those signatures by herself?
Well, that's pretty difficult. You got to organize. You got to get a lot of volunteers. It helps to get a lawyer and work on it. It's not easy to qualify an initiative. It's it's a complicated kind of legal process where you have to file papers and get approvals from. You have to get a description approved and whatever else. But there's a process, and you can check with your city or county, depending on where the tax is, about what that process is. They will tell you. If you call the clerk's office and ask for an explanation of how you do it for which particular tax, they will have to tell you. And then you can get together with other people and you can start to work on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I love learning new things.
I did too. I never knew about it.
Would that be 50% plus 1 if that was on the ballot?
Yes, 50% plus 1.
Good.
Pat, you had some great questions, and good for you being doing your due diligence on your property taxes. That's awesome. We all need to do that. Okay, any other questions? If not, then Susan will be back. We're looking at dates where she will go over the November ballot. So that will be the propositions, the final people that are running for office, the top 2. So we will have that. We're working on the date for that because we want to be close to when the ballots come out. So be on the lookout for that. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's Zoom haul. Our goal is for you guys to get involved in your community, your county, and your state. We can make a difference. And really, this year, we can make a difference. We can really, We did it the last election. We had what, 40% voted conservative. We can do it, folks. People are tired of the garbage going on, and especially being the fraud going on. So get involved, get your friends involved. This has been recorded, and we will get it up on our Facebook page and our Rumble page so you can share it with people. So we're very excited for our May 14th show. That's Thursday, May 14th. We have a special speaker, Vic Dennis. He is a docent for the 250th anniversary exhibit at the Nixon Library, Presidential Library and Birthplace, and it's sponsored by the National Archives. My son and I and a dear friend of mine, she's actually watching, and her two children, we went to see it on President's Day, and it's a great exhibit. Our kids are 11 and 6 and 7 at the time. They loved it. We stayed there for 5 hours. That's pretty good for kids that age. So I encourage you guys to watch it. You guys know this is our 250th anniversary of our country's founding, and we need to celebrate because this is a very unusual in any country. So Town Hall Central is brought to you with the support of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and Greg Britton, attorney at law. And if you care to donate to keep our show going, we appreciate that. I know we put that information in the chat. And we're also looking for board members if you're interested too. So this concludes our show. Susan, thank you so much. You're always such a wealth of information. And I appreciate your friendship, working with us the last few years. So be on the lookout. She will be on before the next election, before the ballot goes out for the November election. And we will see you on May 14th.
Thank you.
Thank you.